All right. Thank you very, very much for this important opening to what is going to be a very, very important series of conversations today. My name is Matthew Swift. I'm the chairman and CEO of Concordia Summit. I'm also the chair of the board of trustees of the Palm Beach Chamber of Commerce. And so I am especially honored to be here today covering and talking about a subject that is one that I'm coming to the table saying I do not know much about. And I'm willing to get on this stage today to talk about that lack of knowledge, because I believe that when you embark to participate in a forum such as this, you have to think through exactly what you are going to walk away with. And I am here today, more than anything, to learn. And I'm very, very excited to be here. I want to thank Rabbi Minsky. I must say, I do this for a living, summits, events, but you're amazing. You're the incredible job. So congratulations. In 4 years to get to this place is amazing. I want to thank my good friends, Michael and Nolan Greenwald. I have to say, when they first started this gathering 4 years ago, I was curious as to why, what was happening at that time that inspired it, and what was happening in our community. And I, like Michael, travel the world for my work, but I think it's also important that we take time to think about the local communities by which we operate and live in. The title of this opening panel is all around the Abraham Accords. So when it comes to that action, when it comes to how we will address and how we will talk about anti-Semitism, the Abraham Accords represents a key element of the solution. But in order to make it successful, I think it's important to have a conversation about where things stand today. And so we're joined by two fantastic panelists, Loay Alshareef, who is a United Arab Emirates-based peace activist and content creator, and Mozah AlKindi, who is a political writer. Before we dive into the conversation, though, I want to take a minute, because I always think this is important. You see in the news, the Abraham Accords this, the Abraham Accords that. Let's take a bit of a refresher of exactly what the Abraham Accords is. And so I thought I would take a minute to just read this out for all of you so that we're all working from the same exact framework as we embark on this conversation. So it goes as this. We, the undersigned, recognize the importance of maintaining and strengthening peace in the Middle East and around the world based on mutual understanding and coexistence, as well as respect for human dignity and freedom, including religious freedom. We encourage efforts to promote interfaith and intercultural dialogue to advance a culture of peace among the three Abrahamic religions and all humanity. We believe that the best way to address challenges is through cooperation and dialogue, and that developing friendly relations among states advances the interests of lasting peace in the Middle East and around the world. We seek to tolerate and respect for every person in order to make this world a place where we can all enjoy a life of dignity and hope, no matter their race, faith, or ethnicity. We support science, art, medicine, and commerce to inspire humankind, maximize human potential, and bring nations closer together. We seek to end radicalization and conflict to provide all children a better future. We pursue a vision of peace, security, and prosperity in the Middle East and around the world. And it is in this spirit we warmly welcome and are encouraged by the progress already made in establishing diplomatic relations between Israel and its neighbors in the region under the principles of the Abraham Accords. We are encouraged by the ongoing efforts to consolidate and expand such friendly relations based on shared interests and a shared commitment to a better future. So now that we've sort of framed what we're talking about this morning, I want to touch on exactly where this part ends, which is a shared commitment towards a better future. And I would like to get from both of you where we are. Put this into perspective from when the Abraham Accords came about, factoring in recent world events, and where things, in your view, when it comes to not just the big picture reality of the Abraham Accords, but frankly, the effect that it is having transcending societies in the region. So let's go ahead and start with Loay on this one. Talk a little bit about, you're a political activist, you're a content creator, but what are you seeing on the ground when it comes to the effect of the Abraham Accords?
Well, first of all, I would love to add one small addition to the definition of the Abraham Accords. It's the greatest breakthrough in the U.S. foreign work of all time, the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accord wouldn't have succeeded if we don't have an America that believes in peace in the Middle East. And no American president managed to do this like President Donald J. Trump when he introduced the Abraham Accords. And the name itself is a blessing because we come from Dubai, Mozah, I, and my dear friend Amjad, and we are wearing this garb. We are representing a message. We are the house of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, and the Jewish people are the children of Isaac. And we are bound to live, thrive, and prosper together in this region. And this is why the blessing of the name itself comes from Abraham. The previous administration wanted to change the name to the normalization deals and picked it up, but didn't really invest much. And we really suffered. Peace activists from the region, we really suffered in the past 4 years to push the Abraham Accords, because you know what's so special about the Abraham Accords, other than other peace agreements that were made with Egypt and Jordan, that they were not ceasefire agreements or security agreements. No, they were people to people. People are traveling and seeing what things are happening on the ground. So it connects us to our forefather Abraham. And they were so good in the beginning, but then they were troubled with lots of wars and conflicts, especially October 7, but they stand still. And they are still strong on the ground. And we believe in this mission. The Abraham Accords brought people together. They brought us to celebrate our joy together and our sorrow together. So when we see, just a couple of hours ago, the people of Israel walking heartbroken to the burial of the Bibas family, Sherry, Ariel, and Kthir, we share this sorrow with them, and we share the sorrow with all those who lost the innocent lives. I will conclude with one thing. There's a great verse in the Quran and in the Talmud. It's a commandment that if you spare one human life, you spare all humanity. And if you kill an innocent human life, you kill all humanity. The Abraham Accords saves the children of Abraham for a better future. And we should make it, inshallah, in the next 4 years, great again, inshallah.
So, smart play on words there. I like that. So Mozah, Loay was just talking about the setback that the last 4 years caused in the implementation of the Abraham Accords. Do you see it having how do we recover from that? How do we recover from perhaps the lack of interest, implementation, or prioritization of the Abraham Accords?
Thank you for having me, and thank you all. And thanks for Palm Beach Synagogue for the invitation. I would say another perspective regarding the Abraham Accords. What I see the reality, I see the numbers. And when I was checking the number about the trade between the United Arab Emirates and Israel in 2024, it was $3.2 billion. And that was an 11% increase than 2023. So this is the time where the war is already happening. And we were aware from the beginning, like even when Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the president of the UAE, he was asked in the beginning about the peace, like why and why now? And he insisted on something that I saw very interesting, and it is related to what is going on right now. He said that every decision has costs. And he said that we know that the rewards and the results for this are far greater than the loss. So last week, I attended a conference in Abu Dhabi. It's about tolerance and civilizations. I went there. Most of the attendees, most of the speakers were Emiratis and Israelis. So they talk with each other. They attend the same places. They communicate. They discuss important things about the tolerance, about how to take things further. So the agreements are a good start. They're a good foundation. We needed them. because without them, it will not be possible. Without the agreement, we will not be able to be here. We needed that bravery from the leaderships in the region, and thank God we have that.
So, Mozah, as a political writer, could you talk a bit about your analysis of leaders in the region? What did this entail for them, the creation of the Abraham Accords? What did that entail for them politically? What sort of effect, how much political risk was taken by leadership in various countries to agree to this?
Anyone who is aware of this region, the complex region of the Middle East, they know that it is very risky. First of all, there is a huge history of anti-Semitism in the region. And then Israel was established, and there was a lot of hate that was directed at Israel when it was created. And that continued. Even when the peace that happened between Egypt and Israel, remember, Anwar Sadat was boycotted by all the Arab leaders in the region. So we know this is very risky, and leaders could risk their lives for that. And we can see that anti-Semitism, hatred towards Israel specifically, was allowed. It was allowed in media, it was allowed in education, it was allowed, like, even in the leadership level. Sometimes I say that, I don't know if I can say that, but you cannot differentiate between the statements of a statesman and the statements of someone in the street. With the hate that they have and the criticism that they have against Israel, that doesn't mean that Israel is not, it cannot be, like, we cannot criticize it. You can criticize it, but you cannot also ask Israel to risk its security in the region.
So, Loay, let's talk a little bit about the timing of all of this when it came about under the first Trump administration. How important was that to this? What was it about this time that made this possible?
Long overdue, honestly. It was long overdue. But President Trump, because he was a believer in peace, he made the courageous step of putting things together. And 2 years before, by the way, when the United States moved the embassy to Jerusalem, it was just stating facts as they are. And honestly, it's long overdue, as I said, but this is the future of the region. The future of the Middle East is for Israel and the Arab countries to have this regional integration. And as I told you, if it wasn't an American administration, a brave and a strong American administration that believed in peace, the Abraham Accords wouldn't have seen the light. And I want to say one thing, that I agree with what Mozah said about criticizing Israel. But we have to differentiate between two things. I'm speaking as an Arab and Muslim. There is a difference between criticizing any government of Israel and doubting Israel's legitimacy. Israel's legitimacy should be undisputed, because why Israel is there? Because Israel has always been there. And we never, when we say this, we never circumvent or bypass the rights of all people. I always say, I support the Palestinian people to live in dignity, but I don't support Hamas terrorists or other people who believe in the killing and murdering of Jews. And the future is for this region to thrive and inshallah to transcend Europe when the real rehabilitation of the House of Abraham happens, when Israel fully integrates with its neighbors, and when Ishmael and Isaac are reunited. And I really want to say that we are the non-Jewish voices, your best allies. You really have to understand that. We are your best allies, and we are really grateful for people like Rabbi Schneider for giving us the floor to speak with this message of peace. Because you know what they call us in the Arab world? They are calling us normalizers. Normalizers. You know, I was put on Al Jazeera top list of normalizers. It's an accusation. Like, shame on you, a list of shame. How dare you normalize relations between Arabs and Israelis? I'm so proud of it. No, that's a shame. That comes from Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera, by the way, which is in Arabic, the official spokesman of Hamas, and in English, it's the defender of the LGBTQ community. This is Al Jazeera. So, we are so proud to be normalizers who believe in peace and prosperity and bringing people together and saving lives. And we need this for the next 4 years to expand, to grow, and to save more lives of Israelis and Arabs together.
So I want to dig into this though, because Michael's call to action to all of us at the beginning of this was, frankly, to turn this into action. What are the things that you would, let's start with the U.S. administration. What are some practical things that you would call on the U.S. administration to do now to further enhance the possibilities and the potential of the Abraham Accords?
So many things. I will just like to be brief. First of all, by supporting the efforts for expanding the Abraham Accords, by giving more people-to-people relations, by supporting all of these efforts, by hopefully finding a permanent solution to what's happening right now in Gaza and making sure that the disarmament of this strip is permanent, and also by talking to its partners and showing the importance of expanding the Abraham Accords, and that will bring peace to all the people of the region, not only Israelis, but all the people of the region will have this kind of prosperity if the Abraham Accords are expanded. The U.S. is a main player, a main mediator, and as Mozah said, our neighborhood is a tough neighborhood. You have to speak the language of the neighborhood, and there is a president that speaks the language of this neighborhood.
Mozah, what would you like to see from the U.S. administration today?
Well, similar to what Loay said, and the U.S. is a very important player in the region, in the Middle East, since Israel is its first ally. Other countries like the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, they are allies to the United States as well. And we need more support to the countries who made the normalization. I am aware as a fact that the U.S. administration generally, they work in close cooperation with the countries who normalized the relations with Israel. That's a fact. This is part of the Abraham Accords. And this kind of peace and this kind of agreement is important. It's a very important foundation and step, but then people like us, we need to take more steps towards that. Like us being here today is one of these things that we can do. We cannot always expect things from the leaderships and from the governments. What about us as people? You know, now we all have social media. And I remember last year in the same conference of the Tolerance and Civilization, I remember the ambassador Mark Sievers, he is the director of the American Jewish Committee in Abu Dhabi. He said that right now, because of social media, people are using AI and social media and technology to spread hate and to spread misunderstanding and misinformation. And he said that this is the most important threat that is facing the humanity right now and people. And I do agree with him. That's absolutely right. After October 7, although it was Hamas who has done something towards Israel, and then the war started, you can see literally, even after a year of October 7, I was observing how the media and how the social media are covering the 1-year anniversary. And guess what? They were talking about the war that started a year ago. They didn't mention what happened on October 7, as if it didn't happen, as if it, like Israel decided just like that to start a war out of nowhere. So this is important. You can see people in TikTok, people on Instagram, people on X, they are writing hate messages and misinformation. And like personally, I had to twice limit the responses to my posts when I wrote about the killing of Rabbi Kogan, and I simply didn't even spoke about him directly. But out of my anger, I just wrote that Jewish people must be safe everywhere. That's a simple message. And recently, I wrote about the Bibas family, and guess what? Like, I know that I would receive hate for that, but I didn't expect people to be that evil to argue over the killing of innocent people. They will lie and say that Israel has bombed them. Like, come on. That's the thing. There's a lot of hate in social media. I don't know what is encouraging this, but we need to be brave enough to not stop this. I also mentioned this incident to the new Israeli ambassador to the UAE, Mr. Yossi Shelley, and I told him about this, and he said, make sure to protect yourself and don't give up. Keep going. We need to keep spreading this message and speaking up about it. So this is what I'm doing.
Matthew, I just want to add one thing. I want to add one thing very important to what Mozah said. When you ask what America can do something very important, and I will keep saying this all over. Do not let those who misuse your liberal freedom to speak freely in the United States of America, because it's outrageous to have radical extremists and the Muslim Brotherhood that are banned in Saudi Arabia, UAE, in moderate Arab states, and they find refuge in the United States, spouting hate under the cover of freedom of speech. And let me remind all the Americans of this important fact. Hamas and the radical extremists and the Muslim Brotherhood, they carry the same pathological creed that brought down 2 towers in Manhattan in 2001. Don't give them the space.
Of course, for success here, demographics are important, and young people are critical to this. And I think here in the United States, when we saw some of the reactions on college campuses, I know there's a panel later today on that. I'm sure there'll be a line out the door for that one, because it's going to cover what happened on our campuses all across the country, which I think did really showcase a horrific double standard on this subject, and also, frankly, a real intolerance that exists within the institutions here in the U.S. that should be by far the most tolerant. They say they are. I don't think they are particularly, but they should be. Talk about younger youth populations in the Middle East. Where are they on the subject of Israel and normalization of relations? And how do you see the effect as well of social media on this? Because of course, after October 7th, there were things trending, for instance, on TikTok, advanced and followed by younger people, totally, completely uninformed people who were not alive during 9/11. So talk about youth in the Middle East and their view of this. Let's start with you, Mozah.
Well, when it comes to youth in the Middle East, they are not different than the youth in the world. They are exposed to the same propaganda, the same messages, but then here comes the awareness. I mean, even if they're young, I would expect, like, sometimes when I see people in their like early 20s or they're 18 or something, and they go with the propaganda and everything, I kind of understand, because I don't know, for some reason, like, we do stupid things at that time. But then with this conflict, and when October 7th happened, as I told you, there was a lot of anti-Semitism. I saw a kid, she's like 11 years old, an Egyptian kid, and she was saying like, oh, you know what, like, the Palestinians, they were not living their lives, and they were oppressed and everything, and they only once did something, and now see how the reaction happened. So it's like, it's very disturbing to see young people think that way. But the thing is, it starts from the homes, and it starts at school, and what they see in the media and in the social media. But this is where the responsibility of people like us, we need to be brave enough to keep going, spreading the messages, so they can see it more, and then they can differentiate while they grow up and they understand what is it. But I can say, like, if I will talk about the UAE, the youth of the UAE, we have a lot of trust in our leadership, and we saw that. As I told you, we have a conference, and we have Israelis there speaking and attending. And then the same week that conference was there, we had a top official, Dr. Aiden Naimi, was visiting Israel at the same time, and it was like an official visit, and they were like publishing about it. So in the UAE, our youth, they trust that this is the right thing to do. They still have that empathy towards the civilians on the Palestinian side, and that's fine, because even the UAE is one of those countries that keeps giving humanitarian aid. And based on that, I remember a few days ago, the former Israeli ambassador to the UAE, Amir Haik, he spoke about this. He said that for the UAE, they have a good relationship with Israel, and they have that trust between each other. And because of that, they were able to have like 42% of the humanitarian aid that went to Gaza, it came from UAE. And that was because of the Abraham Accords, because of the normalization, because of that trust and the cooperation on all these levels.
Over the past 6 months, I toured 3 book fairs in the Arab world, searching for books that talk about Jews and Judaism and Zionism. And don't be surprised, the elders, the book of the elders of Zion is still so popular in so many book fairs. You've touched a very important point. People are a reflection of what they learn. Anti-Semitism is still there in the Arab world. And most of those who hate Jews have never met a Jew. Most of those who hate Jews have never met a Jew. And they know little about Judaism or about Israel or about the real thing that is happening. So social media is a great arena that we have to combat this ignorance and to combat this hate, especially that we are, as Muslims, 1.8 billion people. Many of us are named after Jewish prophets, kings, and heroes. Many of us. And I always say it's so staggering that when I was for the first time in Israel, in 2024 in November, I had a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine. He's saying to me, Loay, stop talking about linking everything to Israel. You know what's his name? His name is Ilyas. I told him, Ilyas, I just want to tell you one thing. I am in Haifa, on the mountain that the person you are named after stood against 400 false prophets of Baal, preaching the worship of the God of Israel. He said, well, no, what are you talking about? He said, your name, Ilyas, is the Greek form of the Hebrew name Eliyahu, the Lord is my God, and you are named after him, but you're not making the connection. We have to make lots of education, especially in Arabic, to tell people more about Israel, about the Jewish people, about the connection that we have, because anti-Semitism is still on fire with lots of misinformation, and we're not doing this for the Jewish people alone. We're doing this for our children and for our grandchildren and for our region and for Abraham.
Loay, I think you raise a very important point, which is there is at times a distinction between being against something or not understanding something. And so I hear from you a really important action element with the Abraham Accords, that there is better understanding. I'm going to break precedent. Don't be angry, Rabbi. I'm going to break precedent, and we are going to have 2 questions from the audience. Please speak loudly, because I don't think we have a microphone system. We only have a few minutes left, but I'd like to open the floor to just 2 questions.
Loay, you may. I personally know your story. I think it's a very tough story. How you keep louder. How you became from someone who just liked you from your upbringing to where you are now. Can you take that?
Can you briefly share with everyone your story, how you went from your upbringing and not enjoying being around Jews and the way you saw Jews as a kid to where you are today?
You mean my story as a recovered anti-Semite?
Yeah.
Of course. So I was brought up in an environment, and in school we were taught nasty things about Jews. Jews have fangs, Jews are evil, Jews are conspiring against Muslims and also Christians. Jews and Christians are your enemies. So this is what you know, and this is what you are encountering. And there was one of my favorite Egyptian TV shows, by the way. It's called A Night Without a Horse, Faris Bila Jawad. It's the most disastrous anti-Semite TV series of all time. So, of course, if you ask a 17-year-old Loay about Jews, I said the enemies of God, how to say this, those who have fangs, those who are conspiring against Muslims. But when I went to Paris, France in 2010 as an exchange student to study French in a program that is called Homestay Family, and I lived with that family that was, by coincidence, a Jewish family. And the first time I saw the Star of David in their living room, I was about to scream, because the Star of David resembled something so evil. And then after living with this family, doing lots of Shabbat dinners with them, and you know, the Jewish mothers love to feed their guests so well. And this is the only protocols of the protocols of the Elders of Zion that is correct. The Jews love to feed their guests so well. I was exposed to learning Judaism and the history of Israel from the source, not from their adversaries. And I became someone different. And 2017, I started this advocacy 3 years before the Abraham Accords. And I do remember when I went back and I told my mom about my different views about Israel. In 2010, she told me, you are under a sudden fascination by this Jewish family. 2 months, it will go away. 15 years and counting. 15 years and counting.
All right, our last question, this gentleman, Rabbi, would you bring the mic to that gentleman back there, please?
Hi, and thank you for coming. How do you explain the sympathy that all the youth in America have for Hamas? How did Hamas succeeded to have such a in the streets and the universities? How did they do that?
Mozah, why don't we kick things off? Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, this is unfortunate because, again, like in the UAE, we don't have any sympathy towards Hamas because for us, we hate Islamist groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Muslim Brotherhood. They're banned and they're our enemies. We fought them in Yemen. We fought the Houthis and we fought also Al-Qaeda. And we are enemies with ISIS. We have threats from them. And Hamas is a faction of the Muslim Brotherhood. But they have money and they have resources and they have people who support them because they mix things up. They mix like the Palestinian cause with Hamas. The Palestinian cause, how can I say about it? It looks like a fair cause. I mean, if I will be honest, yeah, I mean, they deserve to have a state. But not with that mentality, not with that education, not with that hate. If they kept that hate, they are already destroying themselves, because this is the natural result for hate. Actually, I don't know. I don't get it with people in the West. Like sometimes I'm asking myself the same question. I mean, us as Muslims, we know that they are not doing the right thing. We don't believe that they understand what Islam is. We know that they are radicals, but maybe in the West they don't know how to differentiate. That's why even like for us, only because we are Muslims, people think that we are all the same, we are all radicals, we are all like supporting Hamas or something. But that's not the case. But I think you should not give up on your youth. Never give up on teaching them. Never give up on speaking to them. Have that faith, have that love that they will come back. They will come back to their minds one day. What I see now is very disturbing. I see all these protests. It looks uncivilized at all. There's a lot of hate in it. There's zero sense in it. But give it time. And maybe tougher laws because we have many nationalities in the UAE and we have a very strong law. So they respect the law, and all of us like residents or locals, we respect the law because we understand that you cannot hate someone. You cannot go in a protest and preach hate against a country or a leadership or a religion or an idea or an ideology. We don't do that. So I hope there will be some changes, but it needs to be some law enforcement in that as well.
Briefly.
In less than 30 seconds, because those youngsters are so confused, not knowing the difference between freedom fighters and terrorists. They think Hamas are freedom fighters. And if you ask those youngsters, and I did in Providence, in one of the universities there, Rhode Island, have you read Hamas charter? Not the watered down one, the one in 1989. Have you read it? They said, yes, I have read it online. I said, you speak Arabic? They said, no, you haven't read it. You haven't read it if you don't speak Arabic. So this confusion, because they are so kind-hearted, they think they are freedom fighters. Hamas hates America as much as it hates Israel. And it will go after America as much as they want to go after Israel. And shutting down their activists is the right thing to do. I'm not speaking as a dictator, even though I am, but I'm just saying, shutting them down is the right thing to do. As Moses said, law and order against those savages and those monsters, because they don't want freedom. They have failed to have a state for a very long time because they never focused on building a state. They focused on destroying another state, which is Israel.
First, I want to thank both of you. You both are, I think we have to put into context and appreciate just your stories, your bravery, the work that you do. And I think for all of us, we are here today because we care about the subject and issue, but what we do as a result of this is as important. And so I'll speak for myself. I run one of the largest convening institutions in the world. We host the largest summit at the same time as the United Nations General Assembly. The UN is a complex, dysfunctional environment. And we try to make sense of it, and we try to advance private sector issues. But here's my commitment, because of listening to the two of you this morning, is we will do our part and much more to talk about the issues around anti-Semitism and frankly, the education and understanding that needs to be advanced in different populations around the world. Thank you both very much for being here.
Thank you all for being here today. I'd like to present you with a gift for being here with heartfelt thanks for your contributions at the Countering Anti-Semitism Summit. Your voice stands for truth and change. Thank you, Loay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mozah.